So, if you're hearing this, you're probably also familiar with the Top 13's channel. The channel that posts the top 13 most disturbing things that have happened related to a certain topic, with a new video on the 13th of every month. Videos like the top 13 most gruesome discoveries made by EMTs and other things like that. Obviously, there are lots of similar countdown channels available, but Top 13's is unique in its own way. Unlike other channels, Top 13's only include stories in their countdowns that have happened in the previous weeks or months. Brand new material that can't be heard anywhere else. They are a large channel with a lot of resources, and obviously have multiple people working non-stop as researchers to even be able to collect this information. A couple years ago, I began writing stories on a popular forum website. I liked getting feedback on my stories and just loved writing in general. I was already a big fan of Top 13's at this point. I liked how they picked the unlucky number 13 for their videos. And even though they only posted one video per month, you knew you were always in for a treat and were about to hear a countdown list full of fresh material. So 6 months ago, when I received an email from someone that works for Top 13's asking me if I was interested in taking a job for them as a writer, you could believe my excitement. I honestly kind of believed it was too good to be true. But soon enough, they were able to verify that it wasn't some kind of prank, and I gladly accepted the job. The channel was already massive once I came aboard, and the money they offered me per story was more than fair, especially since I was accustomed to writing only in exchange for random people's enjoyment and comments. There were those that would dedicate their time to researching their stories and collecting the associated information and images. Once I was sent 13 stories for whichever particular subject the video was covering, it was then my responsibility to write out the commentary and organize the photos alongside it with video editing software. From there, I would send all of my work to the individuals that do the narrating and final video editing. It was quite a significant amount of writing for each story due to how detailed the information provided was. I guess I always kind of pictured 1 or 2 people running these channels, so I was surprised to find out I was one of a dozen people total employed by this channel. I really enjoyed the work I was doing, and soon enough, I found myself dedicating the majority of my time to writing up the stories for our videos. When I was talking to another individual employed by Top 13's, I was mentioning how amazed I was at the researcher's ability to come up with so much information on each subject. It was then when I was told a secret. One of the researchers has some pretty impressive hacking skills, so they actually will gain entry to police files that included all sorts of information that was never released to the public. This was a pretty serious operation, and I was happy to be part of it. After a month or so of working for Top 13's, one of the owners of the channel actually invited me to come live in a house with them where their main office was. It was a huge house where many of the Top 13's employees lived and worked out of, and they ended up having a bedroom open up. I knew that agreeing to do that would be a big change, but it would also show my commitment to the job, and I thought it sounded fun. I knew I would miss my friends and family, but I didn't have any real reason to stay where I was living. I didn't have a girlfriend at the time, and I also didn't have any kids. So I told them yes. They were pretty happy about my decision and told me my room was ready for me and I could come there as soon as I was able to. So over the course of a few days, I packed up all of my belongings and loaded up my car and made the long drive to San Francisco, my new home. The house was indeed huge, and all of my new coworkers were happy that I was there, and they all seemed pretty awesome. My bedroom was pretty large, and the house was kept in very nice shape. Everyone was running around the house most of the day, working with each other to get these new videos made. Honestly, I thought I was in heaven. Not only did I get to spend most of my days doing what I loved, writing, but I even got paid for it. In the evenings, a lot of us would just hang out downstairs together or go out to eat. The only thing that made me slightly uncomfortable was how the owner and founder of Top 13's would sometimes act. His name is Craig, and he's generally a pretty nice guy, but he was so adamant about no one going into his room. In fact, when I first arrived at the house, that was rule number 1. And that's okay, I understand people want privacy. All of our bedrooms have standard locks on them, but Craig also has a key lock on his door and he locks it from the outside. But he owns the company and probably keeps information in there, or maybe expensive equipment or money. I just kind of assumed it was common sense not to go into a person's room without their permission, but we were told not to go in there often. He just made too big of a deal out of it. But he's probably just paranoid, it's not a big deal. I wouldn't go in there anyway unless he needed me to. But that aside, I felt like I was living the freaking dream. The content that was being submitted to me for the stories that I needed to write up was so exciting and new. Being able to write on things like the top 13 most mysterious disappearances of this current year we're in seems so advanced compared to other videos with the same theme. Other channels report on disappearances from years or even decades ago, and while many of those videos were entertaining, none of them were able to come up with the same content as us. We had 2 narrators for our videos, Ethan and Riley. Both of them lived in the house. A couple weeks into living at the house, I found myself staying up late with Riley and talking to her. The 2 of us would be the last to go to bed most nights. Riley had been living at the house for 10 months now. She was invited to come live there about a month after she started narrating for the channel. As time went on, I continued to write stories with this impressive information. I also continued to spend time with Riley. We eventually started doing things together on our own. Rather than go out to eat with everyone in the house, we would often go by ourselves. I quickly developed feelings for Riley. At times, it seemed like she was developing the same feelings for me too. At other times, I felt like she was treating me just as a friend. To say the least, I was confused with where she and I stood. Regardless, I enjoyed spending time with her, whether it meant something more or not, and soon, things got even more confusing. One night, Riley and I again were spending time together downstairs. We decided to order pizza. While we were waiting for the pizza to be delivered, we found a movie on Netflix to watch. I sat down on the couch, and something different happened this time. Rather than sitting on the other couch or sitting in the chair, Riley came and sat on the same couch I was sitting on. She wasn't sitting particularly close to me or anything, but still, it was something that hadn't happened before in the past. By this point in time, I was really into this girl. I'm not sure if the word crush would do my feelings justice. Riley was a petite, quiet girl. She was also beautiful. She had every reason in the world to be some outspoken girl that is the center of attention anywhere she went. But instead, she was timid and always happy to fade into the background whenever she was around others. But she openly talked to me, which I loved. Not only did I love it because of how into her I was, but she also had an amazing, soft, soothing voice, which is probably why she was paid to use her voice and narrate some of the videos our company put out. The pizza arrived, and we ate while continuing to watch the movie. After we were done eating, we got comfortable on the couch, with Riley still sitting next to me. Maybe 15 more minutes went by, and without any type of prior signal given, Riley casually laid herself down up against me, resting her head on my shoulder. My heart began to race. The happiness I felt from this was overwhelmed by my thoughts of not knowing what I should do or how to respond to the gesture, but I just acted and put my arm around her. She rested her hand on my chest, and then we continued to just sit there silently, watching the movie. I had this rush of warmness spread throughout my body. I felt like I'd been waiting for this moment for weeks. Well, I guess that's because I really had. Eventually, I could tell that the movie was coming to an end. I began to slightly panic because I wasn't sure what to do after the movie ended, and when it finally did end, I just froze. We continued to sit there for a few more minutes, and then Riley sat up. She looked at me with a smile on her face. "So, did you like the movie?" I asked. She just shrugged her shoulders and continued to smile. "Yeah, I guess it was okay," she said. At this point, I was speechless and a bit terrified. I really didn't want to mess this up, so much actually that I was barely able to talk or move. Riley did a long, exaggerated shrug of her shoulders with an expression on her face asking, "So now what?" And still, I froze. I was only able to awkwardly smile at her. Suddenly, she just leaned forward and kissed me. I kissed her back, and we embraced one another and continued to kiss. This went on for about 15 seconds or so, and then she pulled away from me. "We can't do this. It isn't right," she said. She stood up and began to quickly walk away. "Riley, what's wrong?" I replied. All she said was sorry, and then she was out of sight. I sat there absolutely stunned. What did I do? She was the one to initiate everything. It's not like I pressured her into something that she might have been uncomfortable with. I just didn't get it. I eventually just went up to bed myself, feeling so let down. I went from feeling the happiest I have in ages to just feeling awful. I laid in bed for quite a while that night, trying to make sense out of what happened, but I couldn't come up with an explanation. For the next couple days, every time I saw Riley, she basically just ignored me. She would say nothing more than hi to me when we passed by each other, barely making eye contact. I felt crushed. My feelings were really hurt. I spent almost all of my time alone in my room over the next couple of days. I stayed up late one night as I finished writing the narrative of a video. After lying down for sleep, I made it to that stage where I wasn't fully asleep, but also wasn't anywhere near being conscious. It was at that point that I was startled awake by a noise coming from within my room. I quickly raised my head up and began to look around. I was about to blow it off as nothing, but then I saw a shadow coming towards me. The only thing I could resort to was childishly pulling my blanket up to my chin, as if that would somehow protect me against a real-life attack. The fear I was experiencing was finally broken up by the sound of laughter, Riley's laughter. She climbed into my bed and laid down next to me. "What are you doing? I mean, why? What's going on?" I said. "I'm sorry," she replied. "Things are just pretty complicated right now. I'll explain it to you tomorrow, I promise. Just let me enjoy this moment." Her saying that warmed my heart back up to the level it was the night we watched the movie. I squeezed her tight into reply of what she said, and we continued to lie in bed until I fell asleep. When I woke up the next morning, it took me a second to remember what had happened the night before. I quickly looked over to the other side of my bed, but Riley wasn't there. She must have woken up before me. I walked downstairs and greeted several of my roommates. Riley was sitting on the couch, and I was unsure of how she was going to treat me. She had been so back and forth with me, so I really didn't know what to expect. I walked over to Riley and sat down on the couch next to her. I asked her if she was going to tell me what was going on, especially in regards to what she said last night. "What's so complicated?" I asked. "We'll talk about it in a little bit," she replied. "Not now, there's too many people around. I promise, I will explain it to you later." I accepted this answer from her, and we talked for a bit more about random, unrelated things. I had to finish up a countdown as we tried to stay ahead of schedule, and it was Riley's turn to do the narrating. Ethan and Riley took turns doing the narrating for our videos, so basically, I would be busy for quite a while, and once I finally finished my work, Riley would then be busy with hers. I waited anxiously all evening for her to finish up so we could finally talk. I was relieved to see her come downstairs that night, where I had been waiting for her. We hung out with some other roommates and waited for them to go to bed. Once they finally did, I said to Riley, "So?" She quickly turned to face me and said, "Okay, listen." I nodded at her with a go-on expression. She continued, "So you remember what happened with Josh and Dave, right?" "Yeah, of course. I even saw the video they were in," I replied. I was referring to a video that came out a while back about 13 strange disappearances. Basically, Josh and Dave both worked for Top 13's. Josh was a researcher, and he went out to try to gather some information about this local legend-type killer from an area that was only a couple of hours from the house. He never returned. His friend Dave was a writer for us, and eventually he went out to go look for him a couple days later. Oddly enough, he never returned either. Eventually the police became involved, but it was like both these guys just vanished. They eventually offered several speculations, such as them running into locals and ending up experiencing some sort of foul play, or getting lost in the vast forest land and succumbing to exposure, but no one was ever able to come up with any type of solid lead that provided any real answers. As painful as it was for everyone here, those two were of course covered in a video. Riley continued talking. "Well, I don't mean to make things weird, but I was dating Dave. I'm over him. I'm sad he disappeared like he did, but I'm not hung up on him or anything. It's not like that. It's just that I'm afraid to get attached. I don't want to go through that again." I was kind of shocked, but I totally understood where she was coming from. That must have been so awful. "Well, I'm not going anywhere," I said. "I promise you, I'm nowhere near brave enough to go search for a missing friend." She laughed at the last comment and gave me a hug. For the next few days, things went on as normal. Riley and I decided to hide our relationship from the others in the house for the time being. We just didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable or remind them about Dave. I think it might have been at least kind of obvious to certain people, but no one really mentioned anything. A couple of nights later, I was doing some writing before bed. Afterwards, I fell asleep fine, but when I woke up and realized it was still dark out, I checked my phone and discovered I'd only been asleep for 2 hours. I tried to go back asleep, but only found myself tossing and turning for the next 30 minutes. Eventually I gave up and went downstairs to watch TV and lay on the couch. After so long, I found myself feeling very sleepy again. It was about 3:30 a.m. at this point. I turned the TV off and began drifting off to sleep. But before I was asleep, I heard a clicking noise that startled me back awake. Once I came to, I realized it was coming from the front door. By the time I realized what was going on, I heard the front door shut. It wasn't out of the realm of plausibility for one of my roommates to be coming home at this time of night, but it certainly wasn't normal either. Regardless, it was unexpected, and I began lying perfectly still on the couch, fearing the worst possible scenario. Finally, a figure walked into the living room. It turned out to be the channel owner, Craig. I was immediately relieved. I saw him carrying a large box, the kind you store files or paperwork in. The living room was nearly pitch black at this point, but I could make him out from the light filtering in from the hallway. He didn't seem to see me on the couch, and I didn't want to startle him, so I continued to stay still if I were just sleeping. As he was walking through the room, the box partially slid out of his hand and he nearly dropped it. Some of the paperwork from within the box came spilling out onto the ground. He looked like he absolutely panicked for some reason and raced to grab the papers and get them back into the box. I found it a little weird, but just assumed he must have been in a hurry to get to bed. He then went upstairs, and maybe a minute later, I was asleep. The next couple days went on as normal. Riley even outed us as a couple. One morning, I came downstairs just after waking up. There were several of my roommates just hanging out downstairs at this point. I saw Riley sitting on the couch. She suddenly hopped up and ran over to me and gave me a kiss. It was a bit of a surprise, but it was also a pleasant one. One of my roommates, Blake, said, "So I guess you guys are a thing now." He said it in a joking way, and this news didn't seem to upset anyone. Things continued to go well at the house with Riley. Craig seemed happy with the way I was writing the narrations for each video, but one day, he did something that made me really uncomfortable. I was sitting in my room doing some writing. Craig came into my room and shut the door behind him. Without saying anything else, he asked me, "Have you been in my room?" "No," I replied. "I've never been in your room." He stared into my eyes for several seconds, as if he was trying to decide whether or not to believe me, and then stormed out of my room. I knew he was a private guy and didn't want anyone in his room, but this really rubbed me the wrong way. Later that evening, I was talking to Riley about it. I told her about Craig and what he did, and she didn't seem surprised about it. I guess that was basically normal behavior for him. I started thinking about it more and more, and the paperwork he dropped. Why would he even be keeping anything in paper form? We had awesome computers here with terabytes of storage on them. Little by little, I became more and more obsessed with Craig and what he was doing. I would often talk to Riley about it, and she told me my obsession was becoming a little unhealthy, but I couldn't help it. I just couldn't shake the feeling that something was off with him. There must have been a reason he was as secretive as he was. I wanted to talk to the researchers in person, but they lived at a different house. I eventually decided that I was going to get into Craig's room, one way or another, and find out what's really going on. I waited and waited for an opportunity to do so. One morning after eating breakfast, I was hanging out downstairs talking to some of my roommates. Craig came downstairs and pointed at me, and he asked me if I was busy. I told him no, I was all caught up at the moment. All he told me was that I needed to come with him. It turns out, he ordered a new desk online from Walmart and needed someone to go with him to pick it up at the store. We drove to the store and didn't talk much. I would say things or ask questions, and he would either reply with 1 or 2 words or just not respond at all. Craig was a really quiet, secret individual, but he was also my boss. He was the guy that provided me a pretty good income and a job that I loved. We got to our destination and headed to the back of the store to pick up Craig's new desk. The store associate gave Craig some paperwork to fill out. They also asked him for his ID, which he had apparently forgotten in his truck. He handed me the keys and asked me to go retrieve his wallet out of the truck while he continued to fill out the paperwork. Holding the keys gave me butterflies. I had paid enough attention in the past to know which key was the one to gain entry into his bedroom at the house. I considered removing the key from the keyring, but I knew that Craig would immediately notice once we got home and he wasn't able to get into his room. He would probably cut the lock and put a new one on, rendering the stolen key useless. As I was about to walk out the door, I saw something that gave me a great idea. It was a machine that would automatically make copies of keys. I went up to it and put Craig's key in and pressed the button. It scanned the key and gave me a list of colors and themes the key could be. I picked the cheapest, regular-looking one, inserted the money, and pressed start. The machine loudly whirled up and began carving the new key. I kept looking around to my left and right, making sure Craig wasn't going to show up for some reason. The machine was taking longer than I expected, and I began getting more and more nervous. After about a minute, I decided this was a bad idea and tried canceling the operation. There was a cancel button on the screen which I began to press, but it wasn't reacting. Apparently I'd gone past the point of being able to cancel. I tried pulling Craig's key out of the machine, but it had it locked in. I pulled my phone out so I could send Craig a text and tell him I forgot where we parked, but that I found his truck and would be back soon. As soon as my phone was in my hand, it began ringing. It was Craig calling me, presumably asking me what was taking so long. I sat there for several moments, waiting for my phone to stop ringing. I didn't want to answer the phone because he would hear the machine in the background, but I also didn't want to hit the ignore button and have him know I saw him calling but didn't answer. As soon as it stopped ringing, I quickly sent him the text. Hopefully he would just assume I had sent it right before he called. The screen on the machine finally said it was done carving the key and it was just cleaning it up. A wave of relief washed over me, but that reprieve was short because as soon as I looked back into the store, I saw Craig walking down the aisle towards the exit. I began pulling on the key, but it was still locked into place. Craig was getting closer, and I partially stood aside the machine so he wouldn't see me. Just as Craig was about to walk into the exit area, Craig's key was released, and the duplicate was dropped into a small box with a little metal door. I grabbed both keys and slipped the original back onto Craig's keyring while dropping the duplicate into my pocket. Just as I was doing this, I heard, "What are you doing?" I looked up, and as expected, it was Craig. I had his keys in one hand, and the other hand was in my pocket as I was putting the duplicate key away. I managed to quickly improvise and pulled a quarter out of my pocket. "Sorry, Craig, I'm addicted to these things. I was looking for the car and got distracted." I put a quarter into the claw machine and quickly lost. "Oh well, I give up," I said. "I'll go grab your wallet now." He gave a look that was obviously showing his frustration, and we both started walking to the car. I would gladly take him being annoyed at me over him finding out how I actually just spent the last several minutes. We got everything finished up at the store and brought the desk into Craig's room, where he quickly asked me to leave and began setting it up. Now I just had to wait until I knew Craig was going to be gone for a while. Unfortunately, with him being such a quiet, secretive guy, none of us ever knew where he was going or how long he would be gone. With lots, and I mean lots, of apprehension, I ended up telling Riley what I had done with Craig's key. She gasped at me with a smile and told me I was crazy, lightly slapping me on my chest. It was the exact reaction I was hoping for. It was like I was dangling the answer to who built the pyramids right in front of her face, and I knew she was intrigued. Her expression alone told me I'm in. She paused for a moment and asked, "So what do we do now?" "I don't know," I said. "We need to somehow get him out of the house long enough for me to figure out what he's hiding in his room." We went back and forth with ideas and found a flaw in every plan. Then, eventually, I had an idea that might just work, but it would cost us. Craig was the only one living here that had a truck and could move large objects around. We decided we were going to tell Craig that Riley was encouraged to get a new desk for herself too, and ordered one online just like he did. She was going to ask him to escort her to the store to pick it up, giving me ample time to look through his room. Obviously, this was going to cost us a little money, but Riley's desk did kind of suck anyway. We picked out a desk, ordered it, and Riley asked Craig about picking it up in a couple of days when it arrived. To our relief, he agreed. The next couple of days seemed to go on and on forever. The waiting and anticipation was difficult to contain, but we did what we had to. Finally, the day arrived and Riley received an email letting her know the desk was ready. I sat at my desk, acting as normal as I could, but once I saw Craig's truck pull out of the driveway, I went straight to his room. My heart began to pound harder than I could even imagine, and I had to calm myself down in order to proceed. I pulled out the key and made my way into the room without any problems. I shut the door behind me and began to look around. I felt like I had just entered some type of forbidden tomb. I didn't waste any time. I immediately found the box that Craig had dropped that night. I pulled it out of the closet and removed the top. I was almost scared at what I was going to find. I began looking through it and found a bunch of ordinary things. Pictures of what appeared to be Craig and his mom when he was a little boy. I found his birth certificate and legal documents surrounding Top 13's. I found the most common things someone would keep safe. I was both relieved and disappointed at the same time. This just didn't make any sense to me. I guess Craig was just that damn weird. Maybe he has some form of autism and I'm just a huge, judgmental jerk. I began feeling bad. I was drawing all these conclusions about this guy that has done nothing more than provide me with an amazing job and a nice place to live. If it weren't for him, I also wouldn't have ever met Riley. I was instantly consumed with guilt, but my curiosity kept me digging around his room, and the further I dug, the less I found. Suddenly, my phone chimed. It was Riley, letting me know that they got the desk and were on their way back. I quickly started arranging everything just the way Craig had it. In a scramble, I bumped into his new desk. This caused the mouse to his computer to move ever so slightly, bringing the main screen to his computer on. I suddenly had an idea and ran to my room to grab a flash drive. I copied as many folders onto it as I could and then left Craig's room, locking his door on my way out. It wasn't 30 seconds later that he and Riley returned with her new desk. I helped them get it upstairs and told Riley I would help her assemble it. It was painful putting the desk together because all I wanted to do was review that flash drive. It took us almost 2 hours, but we finally got it done. The entire time we were setting up her desk, we talked about what I found, or rather what I didn't find, in Craig's room. Finally, it was time to review the contents of the flash drive. I went and grabbed my laptop and brought it into Riley's room. We shut her door and began to explore what was on it. We came across a bunch of folders. Each folder was the title of one of our videos, and inside each folder was the 13 text documents for the narrators, research information, music information, etc. It was all a bunch of basic information for our videos, containing a lot of work done by Riley and I too. It was completely unremarkable. I was about to give up on snooping, but my curiosity kept me going until I looked at everything. That's when I finally got to a folder that I wasn't familiar with yet. It was titled, The 13 Most Mysterious Disappearances, Part 2. I was familiar with the first part of the video that was put out in the past, but this looked like it was a new project that I hadn't been made aware of yet. I opened it up and began reading through it. It had a list of names on it. I was looking at them, and I wasn't surprised when I didn't recognize the names, as they were cases that must have just been reported. Then, the last one just read, Person 13. I clicked on the folder to open it up. There wasn't much in it, but I did find a text document. Upon opening it, it read, Narrative 13, still needs completed, followed by, Clyde Richards was a writer for our own company, Top 13's. He was last seen, add time and date, while out shopping. He disappeared while separated with his friend while at the store and hasn't been seen or made contact with anyone since. I couldn't believe what I had just read. It was a narration of my own disappearance. I looked over at Riley. She was just as shocked as I was. That's when it clicked. At the store the first time. Craig didn't single me out because he needed my help. He was setting me up. I never thought anything about it until now, but the aisle he was coming down when I saw him walking towards me at the store, he was coming from the wrong direction of where he should have been. And the phone call from him, that was when he had already made it to the truck and realized I wasn't there. My thoughts were quickly interrupted when my phone chimed. I looked down and received a text message from Craig. It said, Hey, so once I finished putting this desk together, I found out it doesn't fit right in my room. I ended up ordering another one. I just got notified it was delivered. Will you help me pick it up?